Spirit close to death haunting. A few years ago, my aunt was on her deathbed, and we experienced a lot of paranormal activity in my house at the time. She was living in Mexico while we were living in the States. The television would change channels. Knocking was heard at night, as well as banging on walls and footsteps leading to the foot of the bed in my parents' room. I was little at the time, but I swear to have seen dark shadows in our living room at night, and even felt someone sleeping next to me once. My mom believes it was the spirit of her sister, my aunt, who was on her deathbed, because as soon as she died, the paranormal activity stopped. Is it possible for spirits to haunt before even passing? The ghost lovers. Well, I guess it's always best to start these things from the beginning. Our story begins on a cool winter's day when I'm Ryan by the way, and my newlywed wife Brandy arrived at our cabin to spend a nice romantic peaceful honeymoon alone, away from the world in our hectic chaotic lives. We rented out the cabin from someone a friend of ours referred us to and booked it for the week. When we pulled up and parked in front of the cabin, we got out of the car and were blown away at how perfect it was. It was something we had discussed a lot, and now we were staring at our dream cabin in person. We were the happiest we'd ever been up to that point in our relationship, newly married, in complete love. If only we had noticed the danger that was nearby. We were greeted by the owner of the cabin, who seemingly came from nowhere. I was expecting the key to be left in the mailbox and not having to meet the owner, but there he was. I was taken aback for a second, because while I was admiring our cabin, he jumped into view off to the side of us, but he wasn't there just a few seconds prior. He greeted us with a smile, but it did not seem warm or inviting, definitely not genuine. And if I would have been on guard and paying attention like usual, I would have noticed that there just wasn't something quite right with the owner. But I wasn't. I was too busy wrapped up in love, planning our week so it would be special, thoughts of our future, the journey we were about to embark on, the memories we were about to create. But it was all ruined. A young love between two genuine soulmates snuffed out because of another's demented, macabre mind and my carelessness. The owner handed us the keys to the cabin, told us to enjoy our week, and I watched him drive off. We then collected our luggage and went inside, and it was just as beautiful in as it was outside. The beautiful carved furnishing that adorned what almost seemed every surface throughout the cabin, the big roaring fireplace in the middle of the living room, the beautiful sprawling kitchen with the finest gas range stove money could buy. That would make any restaurateur jealous, something we both appreciated being ex-chefs, aligned with the finest dark wood cabinets and floors. Then we headed up the iron-woven railed stairs to the master bedroom, a bedroom that was bigger than some people's apartments, complete with a king-size bed that could fit 12, its own fireplace, and finally a spacious ensuite bathroom with the biggest Roman-style tub you've ever seen. This was truly our dream home. We put our things away, went downstairs, and since it was getting late, decided to start cooking dinner. Eggplant parmesan was on the menu and stuffed cabbage on the side, the recipe I got from her mother, both my baby's favorites. A perfect first meal. We then went into the living room, put some blankets on the floor, and made love in front of the fireplace. After about an hour, she sat up and looked over at me with a look of concern on her face. I asked what was the matter, and she whispered that she thought she heard a noise, a distant thud to be more specific. I laughed it off and joked it was nothing. It was just our hot, passionate lovemaking that shook the foundation of the cabin. A dumb joke, I know. And if I would have just got up and checked, we might still be alive today. After our romantic night, we decided to call it a night. It had been a very long day, and we were both beat. Plus, we had a full schedule planned for tomorrow. We kissed each other goodnight, and I wrapped her in my arms and held her tight like always. We closed our eyes and fell asleep. Now, it couldn't have been more than a half an hour that we were sleeping when I felt a nudge in my stomach. I opened my eyes and it was Brandy elbowing me. I whispered, "What are you doing? What's the matter?" I felt her trembling against me. I asked again, "What's the matter, honey? What's wrong?" She mumbled that she heard a strange noise again. This time it sounded like it was coming from behind the walls and the vent. Once again I brushed it off at first, but after a few quiet moments, I heard it too. It was a weird scratching sound and what sounded like a faint whimper. We got up from the bed and turned every light on in the house. We then searched every crevice of that cabin entirely. But we found nothing. And just like that, the noises stopped as well. We reluctantly went back to bed, but I did so with one eye open. A few hours later, we woke up and started our day. I went downstairs into the kitchen and made breakfast. We ate and then started getting ready for the day's festivities. As we went into the bathroom, though, to start the brushing of teeth and washing the face, etc., I noticed my bag was moved. I looked over at Brandy and asked, "Babe, did you move my bag over here last night while you were getting ready for bed?" She looked at me like I was crazy and shook her head no. This was very strange, I thought. I could have sworn I put my bag on the counter right next to the sink, but now it was on the opposite side of the bathroom. But I shrugged my shoulders thinking I made a mistake because I was so tired last night. Another example I should have paid attention to. After we finished getting ready, we headed out and started our plans. Skiing and having lunch at the lodge was on the first day's agenda. Then we would come back to the cabin, cook some dinner, and spend a nice romantic evening together. We were gone for about 5 hours. And if this first day was any indication on how our honeymoon was going to go, then we were in store for a great week. We walked through the cabin door around 5 o'clock, and before we got dinner started, we decided to get out of our ski clothes, take a shower, and change into something more comfortable. We took a nice romantic shower together, but when we got out to put our clean clothes on, we noticed all of our things had been moved around. There was no mistake this time, like with my bag in the bathroom. Our bags were definitely moved. We put our clothes on that were laid out on the bed. I then looked around the room for the bags that were also sitting on the bed next to our clothes before we went into the shower, and saw them now sitting on the floor by the closet door. And if that wasn't frightening enough, the closet door was now open when it wasn't before we went into the shower. Brandy was standing near the closet. I screamed for her to get back. There was definitely someone else in this house, I said. I don't know if they were still here, but someone had definitely been in there. I told her to pack her things. It was getting too freaky here, and that we would just go up and book a room in the lodge we had just had lunch at earlier. Finally, a smart decision on my part. While she was packing and booking the room, I decided to call the owner and tell him we were leaving and let him know about the strange goings-on in the cabin. Just as I was dialing his number, I heard movement from the ceiling towards the closet. I moved forward slowly. The phone on the other end picked up after a few rings. I said, "Yeah, we're the people who are staying at your cabin for the week, and we're leaving early because someone else has been in here. We don't know how, but they have been. And they've been messing around with our shit, and we hear strange noises at night, and we finally have had enough." Just then I heard something slide open from inside the closet. There was no response from the owner on the other end of the phone, just breathing. So I shouted, "Are you effing listening to me? We're out of here. There's someone else in this effing cabin." I flipped the light switch to see what was in the closet. Suddenly, a figure dropped down from the door in the ceiling and stood in front of me. It was the owner. He looked at me and said in a menacing voice, "I know." And at that moment, I felt a warm, wet, sharp pain in my throat. I looked down and saw a bloody switchblade he was holding in his right hand. I looked back up at him and he smiled. I clenched my open, bleeding throat and fell back into the bedroom. Brandy saw me and rushed over to my side. She started crying and asked me what happened. I slowly raised my arm and pointed towards the closet. He then walked out and she got up and attacked him. She struggled with him for a few moments and even managed to scratch his face. I struggled to get to my feet, choking on my own blood, but he got his blade free and stabbed her in the stomach multiple times. I collapsed and she fell right beside me. There was something we always said to each other. It was, "Till skellies and till ghosts," meaning we would love each other until the end, till death and into the afterlife. There was nothing that would end our love. Of course, we didn't ever imagine it would be this quickly. We laid there staring into each other's eyes for what seemed to be an entire lifetime of love and happiness. We died that day, warm and in each other's arms, and the last words we were able to say, "Till skellies, till ghosts, my love." Now you would think this is where our story would end, but for whatever reason, either because we were pissed about being murdered, or it just wasn't our time, or unfinished business of a love and marriage that ended far too soon before its time. But we were back, ghost trapped between this earthly realm and the afterlife. We sat there figuring out what to do, and having to watch that vile piece of shit cover up the murder scene and dispose of our bodies. He buried us under a giant pine tree not far from the cabin. I guess there's worse ways he could have disposed of us. There wasn't much we could do but stay in that cabin and love each other in peace. But of course, even in our ghostly existence, we couldn't get any peace from that man. Not long after we were murdered, another couple came to the cabin for a romantic getaway. We helplessly watched as he stalked them. We found out he never left after giving us the keys. Yes, I had seen him drive off, but once he turned the corner, all he did was drive half a mile down the road and pull off on a side dirt road, park and cover his car with some brush and tree branches. He then made his way back to the cabin and got back inside through a hidden trap door in the back, where he would hold up in a tiny hidden room he had in the ventilation. We then watched as he moved through the walls making noises, toying with a couple just as he did with us. Then when they were asleep or out of the cabin, he would make his way out through the closet and move their belongings and play with their personal effects. On night 2, we helplessly watched as he murdered the couple. The pain rushed back for just a moment as we watched those brief minutes pass as they lay dying. Over and over, We watched as helpless couples were murdered by this madman through the years. We tried to work on being able to interact with the living all the time, to try and warn somebody, like a message on a foggy mirror or a tipped over glass, something, but nothing ever worked. And for whatever reason, when they were all killed, they didn't stick around like we did, whether it being these couples weren't as in love as us, or it was their time because they had nothing else to accomplish. I don't know. But there we sat, alone, still very much in love, but saddened by the constant destruction we had to witness by this murderous prick. Until one woman managed to escape his deadly clutches. Sadly, her husband was not so lucky, but she managed to flee while he was being killed and made it out of the front door that was previously thought to be locked, and was by the killer, but was unlocked by Brandy at the last second. I'll tell you, the look on that bastard's face was priceless as a woman flung that door open and ran off. All he could do was stand there, jaw dropped and in utter disbelief. We watched him fall to his knees and bust out in this laughing, crying combination as he mumbled to himself. We laughed and celebrated his demise. He sat there for an hour when the police arrived, but before they walked in, we were able to write a message to him on the wall, written in that poor woman's husband's blood. It read, "Your time is up, you murdering piece of shit. May you burn in hell for murdering us all those years ago. By the way, sorry about the scar I left you." When he saw that last part, his eyes widened. At that moment, he knew it was us. He grazed his cheek over the spot where Brandy had scratched all those years ago. We quickly wiped the message away before the police walked in, and he began to hysterically shout, "Ghosts! It was ghosts!" They thought he was a madman. He refused to confess to his many murders, but after investigating and excavating the entire property, they found every single body of one of his victims. He was found guilty and sentenced to death. The cabin was purchased along with the few surrounding cabins by the lodge and turned into villas for paid guests. The love of my life and I are still at the cabin, haunting it, I guess you could say. But no longer is it a cabin filled with terror and hatred, but is filled with our eternal, undying love. Our passion echoes through the hallways, and our laughter makes the lights flicker throughout this warm, brightly lit cabin. So if you ever stay at our cabin and feel a cool, eerie breeze blow across your skin, or witness the lights begin to flicker, or hear faint, ghostly echoes in the distance, please don't be frightened. It's just us, and we will never harm you. Just two souls that were destined to be together for eternity. Till ghosts, till skellies. My love. Promise me you'll haunt me. We met at a concert on a gloomy Halloween. I was drawn to her like a maggot to a rotting corpse. I saw her, and she saw me. At first, we didn't even talk. We just jumped and danced to our favorite music. Her black hair bounced in the display of multicolor lights, but her free spirit outshone them all. We spent the rest of the night in the woods, walking and talking until the sun rose. The first time she touched my hand, I was already smitten. She was truly my fallen angel. 1 year later, on Halloween, we walked those same woods under the full moon. On my knees, I presented her a ring, a black diamond cut in the shape of a coffin, sitting on top of a black metal band. "Promise me one thing," she asked as I slipped the ring over her finger. "Anything, my love. If you die first, promise me you'll haunt me." "I promise, my love." We sold all our things and explored, traveling the world, touring the most haunted locations, exploring the dark and studying the occult. We learned to walk among the living and the dead. Till death do us part wasn't enough. The next Halloween, we stood in Hauska Castle on top of the portal to hell. She walked down the aisle in her beautiful black dress. We cut our left hands and joined them together. I had only one question. "My love, if you die first, do you promise you'll haunt me?" "I do." We bought an old house in the woods, the one that nobody wanted. It was horrifying to them, but beautiful to us. We lived and we loved, walking our woods among the living and dead, walking together under every full moon. On Halloween, our anniversary, she looked me in the eyes in the dark of the night. "If you die first, do you promise you'll haunt me?" "I promise, my love." After she fell ill, I carried her through our woods. As I held her in my arms under the full moon, I asked her for the last time, "Do you promise, my love? Do you promise you'll haunt me?" "I do," she whispered in my ear. After her funeral, on a gloomy Halloween, I sat in our woods fearing that I was alone. The touch on my back let me know that I wasn't. She whispered in my ear, "I promise, my love, till death I will haunt you." We walked our woods together as I grew old, and she promised. She stayed by my side. On my last Halloween, my love stood in front of me. She had only one question. "Are you ready to join me?" "I'm ready, my love." We walk our woods together among the dead and the living, haunting together in our woods for eternity. The Darlene House. Thick fog began to drift towards the Darlene House, an old abandoned Victorian home with a lot of history. It had garnered quite the reputation as being the most haunted place on earth. People say that those who go in never come back out. Frank lit a cigarette, studying the exterior of the house. "I don't see any ghosts or goblins in the windows," he thought. He proceeded up an old worn pathway, then paused at the front door. The handle had been broken off. Not willing to let this deter him, he drew all of his weight into the door. The old wooden door cracked and came off its hinges. Frank entered the Darlene house. Once inside, Frank was astonished by how well kept the home appeared. Not a single speck of dust. The fog began to creep in through the open doorway. A loud thump came from upstairs. Frank jumped. His breathing became heavy, and his heart felt like it was going to explode. He got his phone out from his pocket, turned the flashlight on, and made his way up the steps. They creaked with each step as he made his ascent. "Hello? Is anyone there?" Frank shouted, his voice trembling. He got no reply, just a deafening silence. Upon reaching the top of the stairs, his ears picked up another sound. Someone was crying in the room to his left. "Are you all right in there? Do you need help?" Frank shouted through the door. The door was locked. Can you unlock the door? I want to help. The crying stopped, and everything went quiet. Okay, I'm going to kick the door in, Frank said, then kicked the door in with one hard kick. But there was nobody in the room, just a wardrobe and a single stained bed. Is anyone in here? Frank asked, trying to hide his fear. A voice came from within the wardrobe. I'm here, the voice said. Frank jumped at the voice. His heart began to thump in his chest. Who's there? Frank said, his voice becoming a whimper. Frank once again recoiled as a second voice came from the bed. We are here. Frank looked under the bed. Nothing. And when he opened the wardrobe, it was empty. He shook his head and pinched his arm, hoping to wake from a bad dream. None of this makes any sense, he thought. You shouldn't have entered the Darlene house. This place is evil, the voice from the wardrobe said. Frank's head began to feel strange. His vision was becoming cloudy. He sat down on the floor, no longer able to keep his balance. Before his sight completely darkened, he looked down at his legs. They were wooden table legs. The wardrobe and the stained bed spoke in unison. Darlene won't just make you feel at home. She will make you part of the furniture. Ghost babies and ninjas. I was 17 years old when I decided to go to the Job Corps program in Colburn, Colorado. Colburn was a small town nestled in a valley with one road going through it. While there, we participate in a high school program and a trade program on alternating weeks. Our dorms consisted of about 12 rooms with 6 beds in each room. Our history teacher was an older witchy-looking lady with a long wrinkled nose and long stringy silver and black hair. It was close to Halloween, and she gave us an assignment. She told us that if we completed the assignment, we would get to go on a special field trip on Halloween. Me, being the procrastinator that I am, didn't turn in my assignment on time, so I didn't go. When all the kids got back from the field trip, they told us that they had gone to the cemetery. They came back with charcoal outlines of some gravestones, the kind where you place a piece of paper on an object and rub charcoal on it to capture its likeness. A few days went by, and I didn't think anything of it. But one night, I woke up to a baby crying outside. My sleepy brain told myself that it was just one of those babies from the girls' dorms crying. But as I woke up, I realized there were no babies in Job Corps. I was wide awake, listening to the baby cry outside my window. Then it started to fade away. As soon as it was gone, I felt like someone was watching me. I turned toward the hallway, and there was a woman in our doorway, standing there in a nightgown. She just stared at me, unmoving, unblinking, for what felt like minutes. Now, this isn't the first time I've woken up to an apparition of a woman staring at me, but it scared me just the same. I turned around and threw the covers over my head, just as I used to do as a kid. I put on my headphones and played music until I fell asleep. When I finally got to sleep, I had a dream. The dream started off with an Asian man trying to kill me with a sword. He ran at me and attacked as I dodged. Eventually, the woman came between us and sacrificed herself for me. I woke up in the morning sweating. I went the whole day without mentioning it to anyone, and to be honest, I kind of forgot about the incident through the hustle and bustle of the Job Corps day. But when I got back to the dorm and went to my room, I noticed my roommate, the one that slept across from me, had some guests. I also noticed that he had a gravestone paper hung above his bed facing me. He was telling the other kids about it. He said that he got it out of the children's section of the cemetery. My roommate told us that the history teacher explained that this child was a twin. Their father was an Asian man. He killed his wife and their 2 kids, then killed himself. Miraculously, one of the twins survived. I freaked out thinking about the crying baby, the ghost woman, and then the dream, and demanded he take that down. After that, nothing paranormal happened again. The knocking. Hey y'all, I've been having spiritual experiences my entire life, but nothing prepared me for a face-to-face encounter with a demon. I moved from St. Paul, Minnesota, back to Wisconsin in the early 2000s to care for my sick mother. She had moved to a new neighborhood, and I felt uneasy but blew it off. I rented out a home near hers, and that's when it started. I was waiting tables, and it was exhausting, so at times I'd try to nap during the day. I'd be dozing in the bedroom, hear a knock at the door. When I opened it and no one was there, I rationalized, must be neighborhood kids pranking me. So I started sleeping on the couch a few feet from the front door. It happened several times, and there was no way anyone could get away that fast. I thought I was losing my mind when it went from knocking to a phantom doorbell. Some time passes, and I find a cheaper apartment down the street and move in there. A few months pass, the knocking starts again. Only this time, I wake up from a horrible nightmare, covered in scratches too. On top of that, my stuff starts going missing, and I feel watched all the time. My luck was going downhill, and I started getting desperate. I looked for a paranormal group online and found this nice couple. Their names were Ken and Barbie. I forget the last name. They told me to keep saying the prayer to St. Michael every day at 3 p.m. So I did. One fine day, after I said it, I looked up at my doorway. This thing took the form of a little boy. He had a dirty suit on, like he crawled out of a grave, yellow eyes and gray skin. It bared its mouth full of pointed teeth at me. I blinked once, and it vanished. Never had any knocking. No more nightmares. The scratches stopped, and my stuff stopped disappearing. I've never seen anything like that before, and not seen it since. The White Rocking Chair. A totally freaky true story. So this is a true story, and it actually happened to my mom. Now it may seem unbelievable, but it really did happen. So my mom had a loving relationship with her grandma and loved to visit her as a child until her unfortunate passing. However, strange things happened to her when she used to visit her house and to her grandma. In one instance, they were gardening together when footprints appeared in the freshly sowed soil. Another time, the toaster was painted and she and her grandma had to chisel it all off. Another time, she saw him across the street. Other times, the cat would stare off into seemingly nowhere and follow something, and then suddenly leave. Another time, there was vacuuming in the neighbor's house while the neighbors were gone, and when they went to investigate, nothing was there. And once, there was a knife stuck into the side of the doorway. Now all this seems really strange to me, and I have believed it until now. My mom's aunt moved into this house after my mom's grandma had passed. Then my aunt passed away recently, unfortunately. So my mom was there helping her uncle was selling the stuff and having a garage sale. She just called while on her way home and told me this. While selling some stuff, she suddenly saw this white rocking chair. There was a small boy about 10 rocking in this chair very hard. He had brown hair, so my mom walked by and said something like, "Having fun in that rocking chair?" To which he looked at her very angrily and then replied, "It's haunted." My mom laughed and said, "Really? How do you know?" And he said, "It's haunted. I can feel it." He then walked off, and my mom couldn't find him. It was as if he had disappeared. She asked one of the other people helping if they saw the boy, and they said no, which was reasonable since there were a lot of people there. She then asked where the white rocking chair was, and they replied, "What chair?" The other 2 people who stayed in that house also said weird things were happening all night. I'm sorry, but what chair? Heck no. This is horror movie material. All I'm saying is that I do not care how much family history we have in this house. I will never be visiting this house ever again. Nope, nope, nope. With a big capital nope. I hope you guys like the story, even though I am freaked out. My mom is now calling one of the other ladies and is going to ask about the chair and the boy. So I will be sitting here with any updates with my blessed cross and holy water. Thank you very much. I would like to give a heartfelt thank you to the special friends of the channel. Your generosity means the world to me. If you would like to support the channel, the link is below in the description. Also, please send me your stories to duchessofdarkness27@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram at duchess.ofdarkness or Twitter at duchessofdarkn2. I want to thank you all for your support, your kindness, and your encouragement. I appreciate it so very much. Until next time.